Hey guys, let's talk about crypto.
Sure. So the first question to think about with crypto is what does it actually do? And the original boosters of crypto were saying this was going to completely transform the way money flowed back and forth between people. It was going to replace fiat currencies, meaning currencies issued by countries that could fluctuate based on economic policies, and that it was going to be totally secure, and therefore was going to be this really, really important financial instrument. That's largely not happened. Most businesses that accept crypto do it and immediately convert it into a real currency. And the interest in crypto has primarily been either speculators or criminals, because it is very useful for people who want to transfer money illicitly. As an investment, crypto really isn't. Crypto is, at the moment, I would argue, purely speculation. Anyone who is arguing, if you read a paper or an article or anything that's arguing why crypto is going to go up in value, it is purely based on the idea that other people are going to be buying it in the future. That is the very definition of a kind of greater fool speculative investment. It's not even speculative thinking, okay, I think this company is going to surprise with better earnings than people are expecting and the stock is going to pop up, so I want to trade on it, which I don't recommend, but at least then you're investing, you're speculating on reality. With crypto, you're really just speculating that someone else will come along and pay more money than you did.
For your magical money.
Right, and that therefore you will gain money. So on
that you wreck the environment to make.
That's the other question about crypto in terms of its environmental costs. But if you're thinking about it just as an investment, it's a little bit of a weird thing because a lot of main cryptocurrencies have gained a lot in price. I won't say they gained in value because that's not at all clear. And so, someone who has followed my advice to stay out of crypto would not be happy about it. But you still have to think of what it is you're trying to do as an investor. I would argue you should invest in assets that produce value and are gaining in value because of that increase in value that they're creating for the world. Both, I think it's a morally better thing to do, but it's also puts you on very solid footing because what you're investing in is the productive capacity of what you're investing in, rather than investing in something where this is going to go up. Why is it going to go up? Because other people are going to want to buy it later than me. In which case you're not involved in any real value creation, and you're also purely counting on someone else essentially bailing you out by getting so excited about what you've got that they want to buy it.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that with a company that's publicly traded, it has to report on its earnings and the like, right? And it's fair to say that you can assess, to some degree, it has tangible assets, factory, trucks, whatever it might be, and intangible assets, copyright, trademarks, patents, and the like, whereas crypto is this thing.
Yeah, and it's a thing that anyone else can replicate easily.
As long as they have the electricity and the water to cool them.
Yeah, but I mean, people are creating new coins all the time. I mean, part of when Bitcoin never really did what it promised it was going to do in terms of the economic use. Now you have meme coins, which are literally just people creating something, trying to get people excited about it. People buy it, the price goes up, the original people sell, and it's sort of a classic Ponzi scheme. The other thing that's been a development in crypto is the idea of a stable coin, which may have some uses outside of criminality, I'm not sure, but it's sort of going against the whole idea of why you would invest in crypto. In that you could invest in a company that produces stable coins, but the whole point there is that it matches one of these original country currencies like the dollar, and so there's no investment value there. That's simply a device that's designed to allow people to make dollar transactions without actually holding dollars.
It sort of assumes that the system itself won't break down too.
Oh yeah, you're basically trading at that point whatever convenience the crypto, the stablecoin gives you for the systemic risks in the system. You're trusting that the people behind the stablecoin can actually keep it stable. You're trusting that none of the kind of hacks that have happened to various exchanges is going to happen. I don't know the numbers for sure, but it doesn't seem obvious to me that crypto is less vulnerable to theft and hacking and things like that than more conventional bank accounts and
It's not FTC insured, is it?
no, it's definitely not. It's definitely not.
I think it's also important to keep in mind that many of the people who've been backing cryptocurrencies are seeking to unseat the US dollar as the reserve currency, and they really are trying to subvert, the rule of law.
Yeah, well, I think there's sort of two parts to it. I think there are some who really do want to subvert the rule of law, and they don't want. They're very opposed to regulations, and they're very opposed to. They may or may not be actively criminal themselves. Some are, some aren't, but they are. There's a bit of an anarchist streak in the crypto community where they would like to kind of shatter the dominance of the major economies and their currencies and sort of replace it with this, more publicly owned, more widespread transaction. And you can argue that would be a good thing, but I would suggest that they have not put forward what replaces regulation to keep people safe. They're sort of trusting that the democratization itself of transactions will kind of magically fix things, and I think history shows that that's really naive.
Mm-hmm. And is it fair to say, talking about currency trading, right? If we're talking about fiat currencies, you can look to a country's economic policies and its history and its political agenda and say, this is probably where this currency is going versus this magical money that.
I mean, I would say you can certainly look at all those things. I mean, I'm guessing you would agree with me. I would not say that I'm confident I can guess which way it's going. And I would recommend most people not try to make that prediction. But certainly, yes, you can, if you wanted to, if you think that the German economy is doing well and that, interest rates are favorable or inflation is favorable, and you think, okay, I think that therefore the euro is going to become stronger, or I want to invest in German companies, whatever direction you might take, you can look at fundamentals for that. I think, to your point, if you're looking at, is Bitcoin or Ethereum or one of these other cryptos going to go up or down, you're really in much more speculative territory. It tends to be things like, oh, I think this big player is coming in, or something like that.
Should we talk about Trump's coin?
Now we're getting into criminality, I would say.
Let's go back a little bit.
Yes, please.
I feel like Charlie Munger sitting beside Warren Buffett.
I'm sure you have something to add.
And he's famous for saying, I have nothing to add. And on crypto, that's exactly right. Being 88 has one obvious characteristic. I'm out of touch with all the things that bright young people are engaged with and what they're thinking about. I do think that there's a really important difference between speculation and investing. Investing is something you're willing to stay with for a long, long time. Speculation is you really want to know how the other guys are going to pay for it, because that's the only out you've got. And you mentioned talking about gold, which we could come back to, but whenever you're looking at prices and they're going up because other people are bidding them up, don't forget other people can bid them down. And it's really not investing at all. It's really speculation on what you think others will do. On foreign exchange, it's worth keeping in mind, more dollar value is exchanged every day in the foreign exchange or currency markets than in any other kind of market. So more than the stock market, more than the bond market, every day. And the people that are involved in doing it make their living knowing slightly more, or thinking they know slightly more than other people do. And the chance of anybody being able to make a smart move, either as a speculator or as an investor in currencies, is very unlikely.
But still better than crypto, I think.
I think I want to follow up on Charlie's point about speculation versus investing, because one part is the time horizon, and as he said, the question of are you just depending on other people buying you out because that's your out. I think I would emphasize, for me, I really like to think of, am I investing in what this asset is going to do, as opposed to what other people are going to do about it. So if you invest in a company, whatever it is, you have now a claim on the cash flows that come from that company, and you're betting on what that company is going to do over a long period of time. And you may at some point decide, okay, I no longer want to own this and sell it. But for me, investing is saying, I don't necessarily care what anyone else does. If they do something crazy, I might react to it. If people bid the price way up more than I think it's worth, I might sell it. If people bid the price way down and it's still got the good assets, I might buy it. But I'm investing in this thing because of what it's going to do. That to me is the core of investing. So anytime you're thinking about investing, it should be, am I investing in this thing where I don't need anyone else to come along and buy it from me later? Versus speculating, where really that's all you're doing. And there can be things that are a little bit in the middle, where you buy something because you think it's going to go up, but also it seems fine. But really, the best way I think to think about it is, what is something I would be happy to own and would be happy to buy, even if the rules were that I wasn't going to be able to sell it for a long, long time.
Excellent. Well, let's talk about gold and precious metals, and we might even talk about diamonds and engagement rings, all kinds of crazy things.
Sure. I think there are a couple of things that are important to think about in differentiating gold from crypto, but then also would differentiate gold from equities or stock market, things like that. Gold does have uses. It is used in a lot of electronics and technology, and obviously it's used in jewelry. And we might say, well, it's the used in jewelry doesn't have real value, but that's true for all sorts of consumer goods that are really just bought because we like them. So there's a long history of people liking gold jewelry. There's no real reason to think that demand will vanish. So at least gold
I'd
has.
emphasize one thing.
Sure.
The demand for gold jewelry is largely in Asia, particularly in India. And it's worth keeping in mind that that's not what people in New England or East Coast of the United States or across the country of the United States or North and South America are thinking about. But that is one of the end uses of gold. The other is, as Chad points out, in electronics because of its conductivity.
And corrosion resistance.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's got some great uses. That being said, the driver of the price of gold seems to be predominantly investor sentiment over any sort of short to medium time frame. The other difference that gold has with crypto is, and this doesn't take it out of being a speculative investment for that, but that it does have a very, very long history as a store of value. And so I would say, if you said, well, what's the likelihood that crypto sort of collapses at some point versus what's the likelihood that gold sort of collapses at some point and nobody actually wants them? Crypto, that has to be a real possibility. There could come a point where just crypto markets start crashing and people say, oh my God, this is not actually a good thing, and it never really recovers. It seems much less likely that that would happen with gold, not impossible at all, but just because of that very, very, very long history. All that said, a lump of gold doesn't produce anything. So going back to my thought about investing is if you're buying a gold bar or you're buying gold futures or anything like that, what you're really doing is speculating that someone else is going to say, I want that, and buy it from you at a higher price. You are not buying that gold bar because it is going to do stuff for you. You could buy shares in a gold mining company, which is producing gold, which, you know, has its value, but gold itself, as well as most other precious metals, are largely driven by speculation versus utility, and they're not productive assets. So that's, for me personally, that's not something I would ever be interested in putting money into, because it doesn't fit my kind of rule if I want to invest in things that are productive.
What if,
There's one other thing. There are people who feel there's a value in gold because the whole system, as we know it, could collapse. And if the system does collapse, gold would have remarkable value because people believe in it. And that includes central banks that believe in it. So the buying power at a price is substantial. But the chances that that actually develops, very, very slim. Very, very slim.
I also think that I think it's historically optimistic to assume that if we had that kind of a collapse, that in fact gold would be what decided much of anything. I think if we got to that kind of a collapse, it would be military weapons much more than gold that decided how things happened.
and whiskey would probably be more valuable
Yeah,
than gold.
I think there's sort of, because there have been historic currency crashes, especially back when currencies were much less stable than they are today, and economies were much less stable, and they, you know, currencies that were backed by gold to keep them credible. I think there's this mythology around gold that, you know, nothing can happen. I think if we had something that caused, you know, all of the major economies to sort of collapse, it's possible that people would say gold is still real, but I don't particularly see why. I think somebody who's a warlord who doesn't have a lot of gold but has a lot of guns is not going to say, oh, well, I work for you because you've got gold. I think they're going to say, you know, no, I have this land and I have these people, and
Yeah,
you know,
I have two thoughts. I would share one, the accelerationists who believe that bunker they're building is for them and not for their bodyguards and their girlfriends. It's like, your value ends, and gold, besides being pretty, if you have societal collapse, how much electronics are you pushing out?
yeah.
So, yeah. So I'm reminded of a time I was sitting with Chris and Justin, and Chris, this is years ago, postulated, like, wouldn't it be cool if we had a societal collapse like Mad Max, and we could go around like car wars and all that? I'm like, it was Justin said, Chris, of all of us, not just the three, but all of us, who's the one person who could actually survive that? And Chris, Harold. And that's like 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So that's no longer true.
Yeah.
Societal collapse, I look at that as like, our country as it is can feed 300 million plus people and export food.
Mm-hmm.
But if you had societal collapse, our capacity to feed people would probably top out around 100 million.
Mm-hmm.
So 200 million and change of us are going to die in the next year of your starvation or violence.
Yeah.
I'd rather not collapse our society.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Why don't we talk about influencers?
Sure.
Sure, there's lots of money in their advice.
Well, which kind of influencers are you thinking about?
Do we want to talk about the creepy ones or the not so creepy ones?
I mean, yeah, I work with influencers in my business, but really just as people who come and have fun and show other people, hey, here's what the experience is like, because that's what my business is all about. I think if you're thinking about influencers in terms of investment influencers, you should ignore them. There's, as you know, as Charlie has written about extensively, there is money to be lost in trying to beat the market, but not really money to be made. You are much better off investing in index funds, keeping your costs low, investing for the long term, and not getting shaken by any sort of short-term developments that happen, just sticking to your long-term plan. Anyone who is out there making a living telling you what you should invest in is at best adding costs to what you're doing that are not going to get, unlikely to get returned, and at worst helping you buy into something that they need people to buy into because they've already bought it. And they're trying, especially if you're getting back into crypto, penny stocks, or any of the things that are, easy to do what's called a pump and dump, where you buy, then you talk about it a lot, that gets people to buy, and then you sell out before they do. And just get a quick profit off of that.
I think it's Sam Bankman-Fried who's like, oh, I was over my head, I don't know what I was doing. Like, if you set up your crypto business outside the United States, that in itself is like, what are you avoiding here?
Yeah.
Besides, yes, it would be nice to visit the Bahamas,
Yeah.
if pricey. Good. What else should we talk about that's some of the traps out there that people
I think the biggest traps are emotional ones. The biggest traps are worrying that you're missing out on something, worrying that something you've bought has dropped in price. Investing, as was said before, really should be very long term, and you should be, money that's going into your long-term investing should be money that you don't need in the very near future. If you know that you're going to need this money soon, then you shouldn't be putting it into the stock market most likely. But you should be investing for, very long terms, and you should be comfortable with the idea that this money is going to be in that investment for a long period of time. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to be checking the stock prices every day. I'm not going to be trying to figure out, did I make the wrong decision all the time? You want to make a long-term, solid decision, and then not get distracted by what's going on in the world.
we might consider that education, right? You're going to do 13 years of primary education, K through 12, and then maybe college or whatever, and all this while, we're not expecting any money back on what we're putting into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's partly that you shouldn't necessarily be looking to have money coming back out of it, and it's partly that the decisions that we make in response to emotions all have costs. And there's transactional costs, every time you're buying and selling stock, there's a little bit going away. As Charlie has demonstrated, multiple books with statistical analysis, trying to beat the market almost always ends up coming in under the market over any extended period of time. So
Can we talk about that just for a second?
Please.
Trying to beat the market over a 20-year period, which is a reasonable proxy for long term. 85% of actively managed mutual funds, whose managers were paid very, very well, who are very competitive people, who are very well informed, have all kinds of wonderful equipment, computing power and stuff like that. 85% of them fall short of indexing in the asset class that they had chosen. You say, well, is that before tax or after tax? That's before tax. After tax, it rises from 85% fall short to 95%, or 97, or 98, depending on how you want to do the calculation.
I'm looking for number 99, 100. Get her, my guy.
It's a stunning statement. These are the best people in the business. Can't do it.
And they're putting in the hours. It's like the home investor who puts in an hour or two each evening as a hobby is not going to match up the guy who's putting in 10 hours a day.
And has a team working with him, and
Yes,
has
staff.
access to all kinds of smart people, and has access to fabulous information worldwide at all times. It's just incredible. If you accept that, then you can look at, the field of behavioral economics fascinates me, and I think it's important for all of us to pay attention to that. Alfred Marshall, the great English economist, did all of his analysis on a very simple, fundamental belief that the purpose of every individual and every organization is to maximize their economic well-being over the long term. Behavioral economists say, well, that may be true in theory, but in practice, people are different. Actually, people do all kinds of things that are not helpful. that are actually harmful. And those who have done the analysis most carefully come up with between 1 and 2% per year cost of doing things because you think you could make an improvement. That's a big expense because it's not 1%, it's 1% out of 7 or 6% long-term average return. Jeepers, that looks more like 15 or 20%. Yeah, it does, because that's what it really is. Of what you could have had, it's a real scrape-off. Chad was talking about the benefits of indexing. Benefits of indexing are, yes, the cost is low. Secondly, the taxes are low. And third, the chance that you make a mistake are very low. Why is that? Because index funds are boring. Why is boring good? Because boring means it doesn't stimulate your interest in trying to do better. And you leave it alone. And if you're a teenager, you've ever been a teenager, you know your parents have said to you, don't pick at the scab, leave the healing to your own body, and it will take place. Benign neglect is a wonderful thing in investing. And it's amazing how many different ways we as individuals, doing the best we can, with the best motivations, certainly trying to serve ourselves, make mistakes that are costly. And before anybody could possibly be considered an investor, they should have read Daniel Kahneman's wonderful book, Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow, because first of all, it won him the Nobel Prize. And secondly, it's a beautiful summarization. Although it's a fairly long book, it's fascinating. Every page is interesting. And he documents the many, many, many ways that we think we're better, and the many, 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 many ways that we actually hurt ourselves by doing things in the investment world. Leave it alone, leave it alone, leave it alone. And for me, the easiest way to leave it alone is invest in index funds because they are not interesting. They are boring. But
And that works.
I don't mind an airplane ride that is not interesting. That's my favorite airline.
Building on what he was just saying, there's sort of a famous question that was asked of people. Do you think you could beat Serena Williams in a point of tennis? And something like, I don't remember the exact numbers, but I think it's something like 15% of men and 6 or 7% of women think yes, they could. And the answer is no, you can't. You won't return her serve. You have no business being on the court with her. But we have...
But you would be able to say you got beat by her.
Yes.
Get the autograph photograph.
I would take the chance.
She crushed me.
I would take the chance, but before I went out there, I would just be like, "Hey, Serena, just so you know, I know how this is going. I'm not one of those guys." But I think that speaks to an optimism that people have that is probably very useful in a lot of ways because it keeps us going, it keeps us trying to do things, it stops us from being like, oh my God, there's no way I can accomplish that task.
Chad, can I interrupt you?
Yeah, sure.
Some data because it's fascinating. If you ask, and it's usually college students because they're large numbers and they have somebody who's trying to do research, their teacher. But you ask people, are you above average, average or below average as a dancer? Above average, below average as a conversationalist? Do you have an above average or below average sense of humor? 80% of people will declare themselves to be above average, which obviously mathematically cannot be true or can't be accurate.
It's Lake Wobegon. All the children are above average. Yeah, I mean, I think so that the trap that leads us to is the trap of thinking, no, I have an insight, I can beat the market, I see something that other people are missing, and I'm gonna go up against Serena Williams in tennis, or I'm gonna go up against this army of professional investors who have so much more information than I do, including information that is going to be right on the edges of insider trading. I mean, they're talking directly to to the people involved in these companies. They're getting specific information from them that is not widely available, and therefore have all these advantages. There's still a temptation to think, yeah, but I think I could beat them. I think I understand what's happening in this world, and there are going to be lots of stories. Because if you roll a 6-sided die and you win on a 5 or a 6 and you lose on a 1, 2, 3, or 4, and everybody does it, there are going to be a bunch of people who are like, yeah, I'm so good at rolling this die. I got 3 5s or 6s in a row. Okay, but that still makes it a bad bet.
Well, think about members of Congress who effectively are insider trading, but typically lose just the same.
Although I think on average they
Are they?
I think there's a problem there.
Because many of them have lost money.
Certainly,
And I
certainly.
I don't have the numbers to hand, like, is on the whole are they losing or just individual cases? But it's straight up insider trading and a lot of them are losing.
There's plenty of people who have lost money because they got access to some piece of information and were still outgunned by the world around them, didn't understand the rest of it.
Or the other people who already figured
Or already figured that out. It wasn't actually new. Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's one of the key things. I mean, a lot of times, people are surprised because there'll be kind of bad news and prices go up instead of down. And it's because the market knew the bad news was coming. Maybe it was not quite as bad as they thought, or maybe it's like, okay, well, at least it was just what we thought and wasn't something much worse, because there's always the possibility of being much worse. So those things are often already priced in.
I would like to come back on the fact that we all think we're better than we really are. That's actually very good for our society and for our personal well-being. We all go around feeling better about ourselves than we probably should. That actually makes people feel happier, and that they're less likely to be grumpy and argumentative. And it's not a bad thing in and of itself, but if you apply it to making decisions, be careful, because you're very likely to fool yourself.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, great. Well, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Harold. Good questions.
Yeah, it's been fun talking.